I'm Richard Murphy, and this is the first in the video series on the importance of tax transparency that I will be hosting. This series is being made jointly by the University of Sheffield, where I work as Professor of Accounting Practice, the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency, and the International Budget Partnership. We're making this series of videos, of which there will be about 35 in total, because we think that understanding the role of tax and how a country's tax system works is really important. These videos are based on two earlier pieces of work produced by the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency. One of them is Making Tax Work, published in 2020, and the second is the Transparency Principles for Tax Policy and Administration, adopted by GIFT in 2022. In this course, we elaborate on the thinking in those two works, which are themselves complementary and the source of much of what we will be talking about. By the end of the course, you will be very familiar with these two. We think tax is really important, and in that case, that any government has a duty to be transparent about how it is managing the tax system of its country, so that all relevant parties with an interest in that tax system can understand the goals the government has for its tax system, how it wants to achieve those goals, what this means for all relevant parties with an interest in that system, what is expected of taxpayers, whether the tax system delivers on its promises or not, and if not, why not? The thinking that underpins this whole series is that tax transparency is a public good. Public goods are commodities or services that are provided without profit to benefit all members of a society, usually by a government. We think that a tax system should meet that criteria. If it is transparent, we think that it can be. That is because we think that tax transparency leads to better tax policy, more revenue, more tax compliance, more faith and public confidence in tax systems. And as a result, we suggest that tax transparency enables better government services, better government accountability, better macroeconomic management by any government, greater degrees of economic and social justice, more inclusion within society, reduced inequality, better use of resources, increased growth, a higher degree of confidence in government, and an increase in support for democratic government. It's not hard to see as a result why we want to talk about it. To understand all this course and the video series will cover a wide range of topics, including the role of tax in society, why governments tax, what they can tax, how they should decide what to tax, the creation and communication of a tax strategy, who needs to know what about tax and what they need to know, how issues around tax should be communicated, the tax accountability cycle within government, from budgeting to accounting and variance analysis, which explains the difference between outcomes and expectations, including tax gaps and tax spillover analysis, how tax morale can be maintained so that people pay the taxes that they owe, and how the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency Principles on Tax Transparency assist this whole process. To achieve this ambitious goal, the course is structured like this. There will be around 35 videos, all of which logically develop the course content. Each will be from about 5 to 9 minutes long. Some of these will involve just one presenter, mainly me. In others, I will bring in my colleagues and others with experience on the ground to discuss issues. Importantly, downloadable notes summarizing what has been said will be available to help learning, and a podcast version of each of the videos is planned so that you can also follow the course that way, with the notes supplying any visual aids. We understand that following all this will take quite a bit of your time. In that case, it's important to say what we think that you will learn. We think you will learn about the following: to think about tax as a tool governments have to use to manage their macro economies, why it's vital that a government explains its tax strategy if taxpayers and others are going to buy into it, what a tax strategy is, how to decide on the practical aspects of implementing a tax strategy, how to communicate with all interested parties on these issues, practical issues about tax system design and management, and importantly, what the government tax cycle is from budgeting to accounting, and understanding variance analysis and feedback. At the end of all that, you should have a better understanding of the broader economic concept of tax, know how to link that understanding to the day-to-day operation of the tax system, have a stronger awareness of the need for engagement with all relevant partners in the tax system, be able to deliver the benefits of a transparent tax system. So, having noted all that, let me introduce my main colleagues in producing this course. First is Professor Andrew Baker, who, like me, is based at the University of Sheffield in the UK, where he is Professor of International Political Economy.
Tax transparency is the qualitative and quantitative information interested parties require to be able to hold policymakers to account and to assess how effectively a tax system is functioning. Tax transparency is enormously important in making tax work because it can potentially make tax more effective and better able to deliver a range of benefits for society. That's why when we wrote a framework document outlining what tax transparency involved for the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency, we called it Making Tax Work. In a nutshell, that is what tax transparency does. It makes tax work. Probably the most important reason why this is the case is that research, including a very important study by the World Bank, shows that tax transparency increases tax morale. Tax morale, in its simplest terms, is the willingness of taxpayers to pay tax. When tax morale is high, tax systems are able to raise more revenue, which means more resources to fund better public services. However, tax morale is also about the degree of confidence and faith the public has in the tax system and its capacity to achieve desirable public policy goals, to shape the economy, to produce good public services, to produce a fair and desirable, or at least tolerable, distribution of income and wealth, to produce a stable, inclusive economy that has minimal distortions and which is broadly prosperous, to influence prices and to influence sectors and citizens, consumers and investors and their choices in ways that are widely regarded as desirable. In short, the assumption at the core of our work on tax transparency, and which is the fundamental foundation for this video series, is a quite simple equation. Where tax transparency is cultivated and targeted in strategic ways, and where information is plentiful and accessible, then public faith in the tax system as a public good is likely to grow. This can help to create a vibrant, active and informed civic culture around tax decision-making. Better information flows and mutual understandings between policymakers, citizens and businesses. Better policy decisions and a better tax system better able to deliver public policy goals, ultimately producing better, fairer, more inclusive economies and public services. The tax system is a public good, but tax transparency is also a public good that enables tax systems to fulfill their potential. The rest of this video series will suggest a variety of ways in which tax transparency can be achieved and the likely and possible benefits of this. In particular, we'll introduce you to the gift transparency principles on tax policy and administration, which Richard and I, along with other interested parties, helped create through an extensive consultation exercise. These principles can, we believe, help all countries and societies achieve more tax transparency and ultimately better, more effective tax systems. It's our hope that after watching these videos, you might start to think about how your country and government might use, apply and incorporate these tax transparency principles and the benefits they could have in making taxation more transparent, more effective and fairer.
Now, let me introduce Raquel Ferreira, who is the Network Manager of the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency.
I'm Raquel Ferreira, Network Manager for the Global Initiative for Fiscal Transparency, or GIFT for short. Established in 2011, GIFT is an action network dedicated to advancing fiscal transparency and inclusive public participation worldwide. We do this by setting and promoting global norms, facilitating peer learning, collaborative assistance, and the use of digital tools. With 58 members, GIFT brings together ministries of finance, civil society organizations, international financial institutions, and other key parties to address challenges in fiscal openness. Since its inception, GIFT has played a pivotal role in shaping global standards for fiscal openness. Indeed, our first key output in 2012 was the publication of 10 overarching high-level principles on fiscal transparency, participation, and accountability. This was followed by 10 pioneering principles on public participation in fiscal policy in 2016. Subsequently, our global norms focus shifted to tax transparency, a crucial but often overlooked aspect of fiscal openness. With support from the World Bank's Global Tax Program and in collaboration with the International Budget Partnership's Tax Equity Initiative, we commissioned a series of research towards developing a comprehensive framework for tax transparency and participation. This included the publication of Making Tax Work, a framework for enhanced tax transparency, authored by Professors Murphy and Baker. It explores critical issues in tax reporting and information standards, emphasizing the systematic appraisals needed to enhance transparency. Further research included a brief on the role of international principles and standards and a scoping study from a civil society perspective on tax transparency and informed public dialogue in tax policies, towards addressing gaps in understanding and promoting tax transparency and civil society engagement in tax policy and administration. All these efforts culminated in the publication of Transparency Principles for Tax Policy and Administration in 2022. The latest set of principles aims to establish standards for the transparency, participation, and accountability of domestic tax systems to promote and inform public and provide the basis for a strong social compact between government and the governed that helps ensure that tax systems raise needed revenues more equitably and efficiently. The principles were designed to promote improvements in the scope, consistency, and quality of information that governments make available to the public and to establish a framework for how governments meaningfully engaged with relevant parties around issues of tax policy and administration, with the ultimate goal of ensuring that public resources are used to advance the public interest. The principles address fundamental components of good governance and seek to cultivate the trust required to ensure a more sustainable fiscal pact, namely the right of access to information, proactive transparency, accountability, and public participation. Throughout this course, we will delve into these principles and their implications. I hope you find the journey with us enriching and insightful.
I hope you enjoyed this course.